Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity, and Love. Amazing guests, incredible insights every week. This week, we've got KAREN NEWELL back on. She was on with Dr. Eben Alexander earlier in the year. I'm so excited to have her on solo. She's going to share a lot with us today. I'd like to welcome KAREN to the show.
Hi, Michael. It's great to be here again.
Great to see you. You look fantastic. Your energy is always amazing. So let's get into your background just briefly. People can check you out at sacredacoustics.com. You co-authored a book in 2017 out of Rodale Books that's called Living in a Mindful Universe. It's just one of many of the books that Eben's done and co-authored with others, including yourself. You co-founded Sacred Acoustics to help people. And that you did with Kevin Coste, who's fantastic in and of himself. If we do a shout out early on here, thank you, Kevin, for doing what you do. You're amazingly talented. And in the other show, he also got a shout out then from both you and Eben. I have to steer people to, I think it's episode 35, September 17th, 2023. That's when you and Dr. Eben Alexander were on. You did a fantastic job. You took us through a lot. So I really recommend that the audience check that out. Your background is absolutely incredible. You help people with personal development, but you do it through sound, you do it through other modalities. We're going to get into that in just a second. I can't wait to hear how your views on consciousness have also shifted over time as you do the work. And I want to mention one event coming up in February 9th to the 11th. And people sometimes love to do destination events. This is no exception. Nassau, Bahamas. You and Dr. Eben Alexander are going to be there doing an event again, February 9th to the 11th. So hit sacredacoustics.com to check that out. KAREN, where can we start? Do you want to tell us how you first got into the whole spiritual healing holistic arena, and how are you helping people today?
Well, we can go way back, Michael, to when I was a young girl. When I first got into spirituality, as you say, I was presented by my evangelical Christian grandmother at age 7 years old. She let me know that there was this thing called heaven and hell. And she said that when we die, that it's really important that we accept this character named Jesus into our hearts, and that he died for our sins, and that if we did this little act, that this would mean that we would go to heaven instead of hell, where you would burn for all of eternity. So this was my first conscious awareness of someone talking to me about what happens when we die. And I was a bit alarmed by this rule of the universe that she was presenting to me and my two brothers. And my two brothers kind of just did what she said and said, sure, Grandma, fine. But I questioned her. I said, well, wait a minute, if this is true, what about all the other kids in the world? I had been to Disneyland, where the Small World exhibit taught us about all the cultures of the world and all of these children who happily lived in their own way in another part of Earth. And I said, well, what about these other kids? Does this apply to everyone, even those kids? And she said, well, yes, it does. And I said, well, what if they haven't heard about this? What if, they don't have a grandmother letting them know? How will they find out? Does this mean if they don't find out, they'll burn in hell for all of eternity? And she said, well, we have missionaries for that. And I was still concerned. What if a missionary doesn't make it? And she just kind of brushed me off. She didn't really give me a satisfactory answer. And for some reason, my two brothers have completely forgotten about this conversation. But for me, this was a formative moment, because I was always from a very young age interested in capital T truth, those universal truths. And I didn't believe her. And so I happily went on through my life. My mother would take us to church. I went to Methodist church camp. And I remember this idea sticking with me that I was kind of a Christian faker. And I wasn't really believing what all the people around me were talking about. And I remember asking a minister, now this was at church camp on the beach in Oregon in the 70s. So kind of a looser environment. But I asked one of the ministers, or actually I let him know, I said, well, I'm not sure I believe in this God thing. I'm not sure I believe in that. And he said to me, well, that's okay. It's not for everyone. And I was shocked. And I said, well, gosh, can I still come to church camp? And he said, well, of course you can. And to me, it was about the fellowship and being in nature. And they would tell us, the counselors would say, go out into the woods and commune with God. And I would think, where is this God thing? And I would commune with the trees, with the clouds, with the birds, with nature. Much later in life, I learned this is that universal truth of spirituality, that we all can connect to this grander energy that we really are all a part of. But I didn't know how to put words to it back then. And I wanted to know, well, if Christianity isn't correct, what is correct? And I set upon reading lots and lots of different spiritual texts and searching for those patterns, those things that were in common between these different spiritual traditions. And that's what really set me up for learning how generating an experience of spirituality is really where you come into knowing what's true in this universe, not just hearing people talk about it and reading about it, but what feels right to you, what is consistent with your personal experience. And that's where I ended up learning how to meditate and using sound, especially to get into these expanded states. And that's where I learned, oh my gosh, I am so much more than my physical body. Someone doesn't have to just tell me that. I know that because I've experienced it. And so that's really the background of my spiritual sort of awakening. It was all through my younger years of searching and then finally realizing I can just find out for myself by going within. And that's where the sound comes in to help me do that.
And you've been helping people since to go within, to discover their own truths, their own not version of reality necessarily, but to do their own transformative work and so on.
Right. And EBEN Alexander, he's the one who dragged me into that practice. It wasn't really something that I thought I would do one day. But as you mentioned, Kevin Coste, he and I had created these audio recordings. And when we met EBEN Alexander, he's the one who said, you, Karen, are going to come with me and teach people how to do this. And I had this horrible fear of public speaking. I was a technical person doing production and technology for media, newspapers, magazines, and such. And so I was behind the scenes, just taking care of all the details. And he said, nope, you're going to be front and center. And that's when I realized I really can bring this information to people, and it wasn't as scary as I thought. But yes, each of us, you know, when we talk about all of the concepts of consciousness and the afterlife and how you can go within, we don't want people just to believe us and, you know, agree. We want people to find out for themselves, find their own truths. You know, we found that there are only so many universal truths, and one of them is absolutely that we have a soul, and that soul does not end with the demise of the physical body. And so getting to know yourself as a soul from that higher, more expanded perspective really brings a lot of value to how you live your life here and now. And understanding that this soul means that you're much more than a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a baker, a doctor, whatever it might be, a bus driver. There's something more. There's an essence to you. And we were, you know, I was just having a conversation recently about how each of us, I dare say animals too, any of you who have pets, but each of us, when we come into this world as an infant, as a new soul in a physical body, we're unique right from the start. You know, lots of people who have the scientific materialist attitude believe that all of who we are comes from our DNA and how we are then, you know, what we're exposed to, nature, nurture. And yet there's this third aspect of us that comes into this world different. So I know me with my two brothers, we have similar DNA. We were raised in a similar environment, but we're completely different people. And so realizing that there's something more to you beyond, you know, who you think you are in this life is very useful. And we can come to find that out by going within. I know for me, meditation, that's one way of going within. That idea where You just sit quietly. You might cross your legs or not, sitting in a lotus position, or you might just be seated in a chair, potentially reclining. And you just close your eyes and put your focus on your breathing. That's kind of the most basic form of meditation to really get anyone started. But for me, this was incredibly frustrating because I just had all kinds of other thoughts, and sound, things like gongs, tuning forks. That's what really helped me to quiet the mind. And binaural beats, these audio recordings produced by Sacred Acoustics, composed by Kevin Coste. These are the recordings that really helped me and so many others get into these more expanded states. And at first, you listen to these audio recordings, they're designed to help bring you into a more relaxed state where your body almost falls asleep, but your mind is still aware. And this is what's known as the hypnagogic state, that state between awake and asleep. This is the space that's just right for getting to know yourself beyond those constant thoughts, maybe self-talk that's telling you you're not good enough, or, oh, you should do this, you should do that, all of this judgment going on in your thoughts. You can find a space behind all of that where there is no judgment. And when I discovered that part of me that has no judgment, I have to say, that was quite a relief from all of the constant other things I was telling myself, things I couldn't do. Oh, you must not be able to meditate because you're not very successful at it. So you're one of those people who can't do it. And that, of course, just reinforced my lack of success or perceived success with meditation. But once I sort of shifted to, yes, you can meditate, changing that self-talk, that's when I really started to see some progress. And yes, other people we all can get into these states, but each of us will experience it slightly differently. And I know at first I was really intimidated because the people that I would hear about their experiences listening to these kinds of recordings were talking about getting out of their body. They were talking about meeting their spirit guides, and some of them seemed to have ongoing relationships with people who had already died. And I didn't understand any of that. And all I would have is this kind of blank mind or these distracting thoughts. But I learned over time, my way of getting to that, which may have been different than someone else's, was to really just allow myself to not judge or expect how an experience might show up. And so once I let go of this expectation of more exotic kind of spiritual experiences, I started to notice more subtle things about what was going on inside. And I learned that even these sort of subtle shifts in difference can be highly significant. And some of us are just more sensitive than others. Some of us need a big splashy experience to even remotely get our attention. But I will say that the problem with the big splashy experiences is that so often, especially the Western mind, doesn't want to believe that it actually happened. We've been conditioned to believe that these kinds of experiences are hallucinations, or somehow we're fooling ourselves, that the brain can play all kinds of tricks. But what I've learned is, nope, these are actual spiritual experiences that really are beyond the physical world. And an example of that, I did eventually have some what others might consider to be exotic experiences. But, I eventually did meet a spirit guide, and this was in a hypnosis session. I think that all of the listening to the audio recordings and practicing meditation got me into a space where I was more susceptible to going deeper in a hypnotic regression. And I was able to meet a spirit guide who has since shown up to me, just like these people talked about. And so when you hear this sort of thing, some of you may already be very experienced with connecting to spiritual energies, and others of you may be quite beginners. And it's just like anything in life. Some of us will have the natural ability, but all of us can just practice. That's why it's called meditation practice, because you're not supposed to necessarily be an expert at it until you've done it for, at least in Tibet, I think it's 10,000 hours of meditation before you're considered to be good at it. And so it's just a matter getting started using any technique, but the one, of course, we recommend and that worked for us was these binaural beat sacred acoustics audio recordings.
Can you explain just binaural beats, just so people hear that it's two different patterns each ear, and maybe just a few words on that?
Yeah, binaural beat at its most simplest is when you have one frequency in one ear, say 100 hertz frequency, a slightly different frequency in the other ear, say 104 hertz. And so it's that difference, that 4 hertz difference, that makes what we call a wavering sound. So it's like a wah, wah, wah. And the speed of that wah, wah sound depends on the difference between those two frequencies. Now, when you listen to binaural beats and it's just the pure frequencies, it can be a little harsh on the ear because it's not a natural sound. It's a digital frequency. And so many binaural beat producers will add white noise, pink noise, brown noise, or rain, surf, or some kind of water sound, something that will mask or kind of make those digital frequencies more gentle. But in our case, we actually combine our carrier frequencies, the ones that you can actually hear, we combine them using harmonic principles. And so, for example, we have something called our ohm frequencies, and these can be found on sacredacoustics.com. You enter your email address on the free download section, and we'll send you this file. But that file is created using frequencies of 108, 216, and 432 hertz. And if you know simple math, you know that 108 plus 108 equals 216, 216 plus 216 equals 432. And that's what the harmonics, that's how the harmonics are created, is using those different octaves of the frequencies. And so when we did this, when we incorporated these harmonic principles, we found that people no longer needed the water, the pink noise to make them sound more appealing. And so that's one thing that makes Sacred Acoustics binaural beat audio recordings unique from most other producers. And it's also much more complex than how I've been stating it. So anytime you get a 4 hertz signal, you're getting it probably from 6 different layers of frequencies. And we also will work in often some delta, some alpha, some theta to kind of keep it interesting. What I learned is that our brains, while there's some general conclusions about the brain state we're in, say when we're sleeping, most people are in delta, 0 to 4 hertz. Most people, when they're meditating or in some kind of creative zone, are in the theta zone, the theta brainwave state. 4 to roughly 7 hertz, 8 to 12 hertz is alpha. That's a very focused but not active state. And then beta, 12 to 30 hertz, that's the active state. That's the state we're in most of the time. But when you take an EEG from someone, that's just you put little probes up around on the brain. It's the electric signal that's coming out of the brain. And when you do that, you find that you're in more than one state at once. You're actually in combinations of states. So while you're in a beta state, there may be a little bit of theta going on. When you're in a delta state sleeping and you start having dreams, your brain will start emitting alpha brainwaves. And so there really is not just one state we're in all the time. And our brains are unique from one to the other person. Our brainwaves are as unique as fingerprints. They can be used to identify people in some cases. And so it's no wonder then that when we give people these binaural beat recordings to listen to, that we all respond a little differently. And I know when we were first creating these, Kevin and I would analyze other producers of binaural beats, and we kind of take them apart and put them back together again. That's how we first learned how to do this. But we would put them back together in ways that matched our personal preferences. And so for me, I really wanted a lot of delta. I kept asking, can we go a little lower? I need a little more delta, because I think I assume I have a more active brain that wants those lower frequencies to get into those states. But then when we started sharing them with other people, many people would just fall asleep. It was too much delta. right? So each of us kind of need to experiment and listen to different combinations of frequencies to find out what is that combination that gives us the state that we're looking for. And those states range from anything from just getting a better night's sleep, reducing anxiety. Some people have seen symptoms of depression improve. Not everyone, again, we're all unique, just like with medications. But, just those simple types of responses can be so important to people who have insomnia or who are suffering from anxiety. But it goes all the way up to, very spiritual experiences. And someone just wrote to me, this is an interesting story. She had gotten our Whole Mind Bundle, which is available at a very low price and also for free for anyone who is in any kind of financial difficulty. Just select the free option. We don't want there to be any barrier. But she had been listening to the whole alpha, the whole delta, the whole theta. And she said she was listening to whole alpha. And she had this, first of all, she said that nothing really had happened except for this one experience when she was listening to alpha. And she said she felt like, she went into it from an awake state, but she felt like she was in a dream space, which of course alpha is present when people are dreaming. And she said that she was at this long table, like the Last Supper, and all along the table, on both sides of the table, were people who she had lost, who had died, including pets were there, and they were all just lined up. And she went down the table and greeted each one of them. And at the end of this experience, she was like, "Gosh, that all just happened really quickly at the end, and I didn't know what to make of it. Gosh, what do you think?" And I wrote back to her and I said, "Oh my goodness, this is what many people are striving to have happen. They want something to happen like this so that they can know that their deceased loved ones are still somehow in a form that survives the death of the physical body." And this woman had just kind of landed upon this and thought, "Gosh, isn't that interesting?" And so, of course, I encouraged her to, next time she listened, to kind of, because she had expressed an interest in communicating with these folks. And I suggested that she could return to that space with her intention and initiate some conversations, ask some questions. What's so interesting in this study of after-death communications is that the messages that people are bringing to those of us who are still surviving almost always have to do with love. I still love you. I'm still with you. I still survive. I'll see you again. Occasionally, they're trying to bring closure, maybe to situations that needed closure here on Earth, say a lost item or, an ingredient from a long lost family recipe or something like that. Sometimes people will get those messages, but this woman just had their presence. And sometimes that presence, that loving presence, is enough. And that is another kind of experience people can have while listening to these recordings. Some people have reported having out-of-body experiences where their kind of energy, consciousness, astral body, some might say, leaves the physical body. And the classic example is kind of turning around and looking back and you see your body. But others can just find themselves in other, parts of their world, say in their relatives' home or something like that. These experiences often happen when someone's not trying, and then when they try, the experiences are much more challenging to achieve. But that just speaks to that hypnagogic space, how much fruitful kind of mental and emotional activity that we can really generate and cultivate in that space that can lead to these kinds of experiences. And so that's what binaural beats do, is they help you to achieve that, because we're feeding you the brainwave signal that actually mimics the space between awake and asleep. And sometimes it's just a more focused level, sometimes it's a little deeper, but it's somewhere between, down in the delta range and below that beta range. Now, some people will ask about gamma. That's 30 hertz and above. And at first they just called everything above 30 hertz gamma, but now they've come up with other names to kind of, I think there's lambda and all these Greek names that sort of represent different categories. But generally speaking, above 30 hertz is known as that gamma state that people will get into, say, if they're athletic and they're running, and they might get into that runner's high, anyone who's had that experience. Others, it's very, very, very deep, deep meditation. I know Tibetan monks will sometimes, when they study their brainwaves, they'll be more down in that theta state, and then they'll reach a certain phase of their experience where they'll jump up into the gamma range. And we've seen that happen too with people that we attach our own more rudimentary EEG device, one that has 20 probes around the brain and one that's just on the forehead. But we were once monitoring a medium who was making connections to the other side. And when she made that connection, she shifted into this gamma state. And so this is a state our brains seem to go into more naturally. It's very challenging with binaural beats to drive a gamma state, because 30 hertz and above, that's when you put a frequency like 100 hertz and 130 hertz, you don't have as much of that wavering sound anymore. And so they're not delivered in the same way. However, one caveat, I will tell you, light body, we did find a way to deliver gamma frequencies. And that's a recording that you can find on sacredacoustics.com. Light body's carrier frequencies are built using solfeggio frequencies. These are ancient frequencies known to have certain effects that lots of people have studied. And we incorporated them into this light body recording where there's gamma and delta and theta and alpha. So that's quite an experience. We generally recommend that not for beginners, but at least have some familiarity with how you respond to these different brainwave states. But that's kind of how the really wide range of how binaural beats can work on many different people.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of topics. That was brilliant. We're not our roles. We're not, I mean, we are a mom. We are a lawyer. We're all those things. But in another sense, in a higher sense, in a broader sense, we're more than that within, and we're connected to all there is. There's consciousness and everything. So we're not our name on our, even our license. I had that said to me once by a neighbor, and I was like, quick as a whip, I was like, no, I don't think we're our name on our license. You are, but you're not. There's always more. There's always unlimited potential and unlimited connecting and more love available. When we listen to these binaural beats, it's headphones. That's what you recommend, right?
Yes, it's very important to use headphones so that you get the two frequencies being delivered. And even when there are big combinations of frequencies, you want to get that. And so nowadays, so many people have these Bluetooth one speaker systems, and they'll, connect their phone and suddenly they're playing their playlist for a party or something. But that one speaker system isn't going to deliver the sounds in the same way. So don't have that be your only way to try them. Earbuds will work too. Everyone gets earbuds with their devices nowadays, and so it should be easy to find. If you do use speakers, some people, like including us, we have a surround sound system. And so if you're delivering across a stereo system where you have stereo, some people have forgotten what that means, but stereo just means one signal on the left, a different sound on the right. And so that stereo system, even with speakers, can be effective. And that's what we use at in-person events. We'll set up big giant speakers and people will still have some effect. But of course, in that setting, the group energy sure adds a lot to generating personal experience.
And that was my next question. So people want to come to NASA, Paradise Island, and do your Bahamas event again, February 9th to the 11th, 2024. What can they expect from not just that event, but most of your not typical, but atypical events here? How is it loosely set up so that they can understand why they should sign up and head to exotic Bahamas? And what can they expect afterwards? Will they be able to enjoy the beach? Are they going to be wiped out? Are they going to be just so relaxed that they can't wait to touch the ocean? Are you once in a while taking them into the ocean and doing the beats there? I'm kidding on that. I'm sure it's in a facility. But tell us a little bit more about what a typical event looks like and the Bahamas too.
Yeah, well, a typical event, EBEN is almost always with me, and EBEN often will share his, what happened to him during the time he was in coma when he touched the spiritual realm and all the lessons he learned. But he brings a beautiful, solid foundation of scientific evidence and theory that supports all of this. And there's a lot of people out there who connect science to spirituality, but EBEN does it from a place of materialist science, that academic world. And so the language that he uses is very suited to people who have that kind of understanding. But then I come along and kind of bring it down to, why does this matter to you? Why do you as an individual need to be concerned about what the overriding worldview of the world is? And it does matter. If the overriding materialist worldview assumes that all spiritual experience is an anomaly or something, and a hallucination, that's not very validating to those of us who have had these experiences. So having a scientific theory that actually supports and accounts for these kinds of experiences really helps a lot of people to trust their experience and to know that it's a very important thing to pay attention to. And then we bring people to an actual experience using these audio recordings. Most often it's a custom guided meditation. We use the same frequencies that you might hear in one of the recordings that's available on our website, but the guidance, the guided part will be very pertinent to whatever we're talking about in that moment. And people will, fortunately in the Bahamas, it's a yoga retreat center. So we are on a big platform. It's all outdoors. There's no walls on this building. And they lay out yoga mats and all kinds of little cushions, and people can lay back and get very comfortable. And amazingly, they have an excellent sound system. They don't scrimp on technology here, even though it's kind of a rustic place for some, given we have internet access, but no phones, no television, that sort of thing. So it's really a nice retreat. And the way this works is the workshop time is very minimal. We do 2 of those for an hour and a half on each afternoon. And then in the evenings, we do another presentation that's available to anyone who is there at the center. And the rest of your day, there's other kind of activities that are optional that you can do, including yoga. 2 yoga sessions each day are included. And then beach is right there. We're actually on Paradise Island, just down from the resort called the Atlantis. Some of you may be familiar with that. And on the other side, you have all these cruise ships coming in. And then here we are in this beautiful paradise. It really is Paradise Island on the little spot that they have. It's very lush with, native plants. And they just do a beautiful job of making it into this tropical paradise while you're also doing yoga and learning from these people. It's actually a Hindu Shivananda yoga retreat center, but they are open to all tradition. No one needs to feel like they aren't welcome, because they do cover all spiritual traditions as being important, and even secular spirituality. If you don't have a particular tradition, you are welcome at this place to do yoga and connect with people. And that's how our events are set up. And we do them online as well. All the features are present except for the beach. And you don't have the group energy all there in the same room with you, but we are able to, deliver experiential experiences online as well.
Okay, so now you've been doing this a while. Everyone has the opportunity to do constant growth and expansion. I'm going to ask this in 2 different ways. How has your viewpoint on consciousness shifted or expanded, or you're allowing more in some fashion? That's the second question. But what lately has been your opportunity for growth on another front? What have you been finding suddenly more room to explore, or more enjoyment just day to day, or it could be just some modality? What have you been enjoying a lot? Like, let's say 2022, 2023.
Well, one thing I've been enjoying a lot is gardening. We all had to kind of stay home more during COVID, and that was a real blessing for me because it allowed me to spend more time gardening, and I learned all kinds of techniques. I'm now, taking cuttings from ivy and boxwoods and dogwood trees and growing them into little topiary plants. I'm really getting into it. It's a whole other way to experience consciousness because you're working with plants and not people. And so really connecting with plants and the earth is a non-verbal thing that I really, really enjoy. And I've always been a gardener, but I've gotten into it much, much more lately. And I figured if if we ever stop traveling, I'll just start selling trees to my local community and maybe help the planet, right? The more trees we have, the better for the climate. And so I've been really into that. But on an interpersonal level, I had been, this is a situation that has evolved over time, and it has really amazingly grown just in the past few months. And for years, I was kind of relegated to a pattern of not being fully accepted, I'll say, in a certain situation. And it had to do with one person's kind of setting the tone for all of that. And what has happened in recent months, all of that kind of settled down to kind of an ability to get along, but not necessarily completely healed. And so what's happened now is that individual has found herself in the same situation that I had been in. And I'm watching her, how she's going to deal with it. So she's, it's kind of like karma. Whatever she caused, I'm trying to be really general here.
Yeah.
Whatever anxiety she caused on me, she is now having that same anxiety put back on her from another way. And my growth in this situation is not to be ha ha ha, oh no, now you get to suffer like I did. Mine is to actually help her get through this because I have firsthand knowledge, and to be there with grace, compassion, and wisdom. Even though she's the one who caused it to me, right, I'm planning on being there for her to help her get through the very much the same situation. So that growth, when we go through these horrible hardships, this is what I realized. It had very, very lots and lots of tension for many years. Now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm able to understand it in such a different way and help someone who is now going through not only the same thing that she caused in me, but she's not seeing the connection yet. So anyway, the growth on the other side is always so obvious, but when you're going through it, it can be quite challenging. So it's nice to be on the other side of one of those learned lessons.
Yeah, my problem is, my situation is, very few of us view everything as our instruction, or turn around and say, hey, I just got laid off for 30 years after 30 years with IBM. This is my opportunity for growth. None of us can flip the switch that quickly. We're not necessarily a saint, a guru out of India, Eckhart Tolle, but the path is always headed this direction. So whether it's decades, lifetimes, just to go from here to here. And I'll say it one last way. Faith becomes reality, and it could be a non-religious faith, a religious faith. To me, it's all the same, letting go the distance from here to here, whether it's through binaural beats, just breathing, smiling, laughter. There's a million ways into that heart. What's something unusual that you and EBEN have been contemplating for a trip, experiencing in the last year? Is there another modality you've played around with a little, or something that's been totally exciting? Is it nature walks? Is it the gardening? He's gotten dirty as well and gotten out there. I love Japanese maples. I got to mention it. And I love growing, it's been tomatoes and basil lately, whereas I used to do flowers, and I do tons of flowers a little bit still, but photography. So I've got a lot of flower photos, and I've gotten help from angels with that. Tell us something about you and EBEN, again, exploring. There are no boundaries with the universe. And I think that's another way to sum this up, is just shedding all the limits, all the roles, what you think you know, long enough to just listen, experience, and have a direct connection to all there is. And that's when we can get uncomfortable. We're not used to letting go all the way. What else have you guys been experiencing lately or playing around with that you can share?
Well, I think that gardening, I'll give you EBEN's take on that. It's been wonderful. When we first met, he would say that the one thing he wishes he would have studied that he didn't, because he studied chemistry, cosmology, of course, neurosurgery, all of these hardcore things, was botany. He wanted to know, how do plants work? And I had never really studied botany, but of course, horticulture is growing plants. So I had some knowledge there. But now what's happening is I'm not only learning how plants grow, I'm also collecting seeds, learning when to plant them, how to harvest them. And what is so wonderful about all of this is that Eben is right there next to me, wanting to know all of this. And so he's kind of the lead in the consciousness field, you know, getting me out there, kind of making me feel more comfortable doing things in a public fashion. And I'm sort of the lead in the gardening, but he loves it, and he hasn't really done a lot of it in his lifetime. But wow, anything I need, he's watering, he's carrying, he's moving things around, and that really has been new for us. Really using our property that we already own to make the most of what we have has been really, really fun. Automatic watering systems, and building new raised beds and carrying sand around. So yeah, it's what do they call that? Chop wood, carry water, right? Even though you're spiritually growing in new ways, the real fun of life is that doing things in the material world. And so that, I'll just repeat that one because Eben also is doing that with me, as you suggested. So,
and for the audience, I mean, Eben is fantastic. You can hear him. There's the Theosophical Society speech that I mentioned in your September 17th, 2023 joint appearance on the show, but he goes on, I think, for an hour and a half or so, and it's got, I think, 4 million views 8 years ago. But boy, is that a good one. But it's
that one I was present for that one, and for some reason that one has been the most popular one. I think it's a very complete version of his story, but before he started going off on many tangents that we go off on now. So yeah, it's a wonderful sort of original story, a good one.
And your September 17th appearance on this show, he really comes across. You can feel where he's coming from, and so I think that's the genuineness is what I really enjoyed, because it was the first time I officially met him. I'm going to mention something from India. There's a big portion of the population that allows for consciousness to exist in everything. There's a lot of ways to handle that, and more with quantum physics. They're talking about that objects have, much more space in them than their actual material, blah, blah, blah. But consciousness in the sense of a living consciousness in everything. So trees can speak, stones can talk to you if you'll listen, or if you'll just slow down and pay attention. So I wanted to mention that, or ask about that. You've connected with trees before, and you mentioned that in Oregon, and you've listened. Can you share with us, have you gone as far as seeing the energy on the plants around you? Do you take that time out? That's a lot to ask for in the middle of touching Earth. But are you communing at that extra level or in that extra way, or are you getting there?
I do, absolutely. I can't say I'm a visual seeing energies around the plants, but I feel them. And I actually took a plant communication course many years ago before I knew Eben. And we learned how to connect with plants, and you do it the same way you connect with humans and animals, with your heart energy, not with your mind, but you kind of open up your feeling state, and then you await the information that comes back. And for the weekend that I spent doing this, we all were supposed to go into a garden. We all went into the same garden, and we selected the plant we wanted to work with. Ooh. And I selected one that had heart-shaped leaves because I really love hearts. And that turned out to be very playful, joyful, amazing energy. Someone else had chosen the walnut tree. And apparently when you connect with the walnut, it's very serious, very, difficult problems that you're trying to resolve. And so that was really interesting to see all the different ways that plants can communicate energy. But I'll tell you a story. When I was learning how to generate feelings of gratitude in my heart. And I don't know if I talked about this on the last program, but for me, it was puppies that helped me memories of puppies that helped me to generate these feelings of gratitude. But at the time I was doing all of this practice, I was driving to work one day, and on the side of the road, this is the 95 corridor between DC and Baltimore, Washington, DC and Baltimore. And so very busy commuter traffic, but on the side of the road were these blossoming cherry trees. They make beautiful blossoms, and I saw them. And so my way of communicating with the plants was to express my feeling of gratitude for their trees and the beautiful blossoms that they were displaying. And what was so amazing is, I'm here expressing this gratitude, is that I felt the gratitude come back. But that gratitude was enormous. And I was like, oh my gosh, these trees just love that we notice them. And they love that so much. They're showering me with this beautiful energy. And so, yes, any old time, it's perfectly appropriate to kind of direct your gratitude to whatever object in nature. Maybe it's a mountain or a beautiful stream or something like that. Just direct your gratitude towards that object in nature, and boy, do you get something coming back to you. That's what I imagined. And so, yes, while I'm working on the plants, I'm just trying to get them to root. So I try to connect with them, and encourage them and have them know I'm paying attention, because I think they respond to that just like a human or an animal would. I love communing with plants. Yes, all the way back.
Oh, I love it.
I didn't understand what I was doing back on that beach in Oregon.
So I've been a runner for 40 plus years, and you still have societal thoughts that'll pop up immediately, which is what stymies a lot of us from just getting a few more miles in, or it becomes more of a difficult task to do because it's first thinking and we're not shedding the thinking to relax into the run. But that's why good music, binaural beats in your ear pods work fantastic. But angels will come in and remind me to look at the trees, see the green. We have a lot in Texas, San Antonio. We have a lot of the cedars. So you look at those, but if you really let go, you can feel the cedars like supporting you. And I've got to mention, where it's not 2011 quite yet, where it was 100 days of 100 degrees in Austin, 100 plus degrees, no rain, hottest thing I've ever been through, trees dying, transcendental running back then, but it's pretty close here. So I actually doubled up some hoses, went over the fence, down the hill, that we live on top of a hill, and I was watering trees. I'm not sure how much like 6 minutes a tree is going to do, but I would start hearing trees saying, I would like some. And I wish I could just do 20 buckets instead, because I know buckets, it tells me the amount. But one tree after another, I ended up doing a much bigger circle than I thought. And I'm going to need to do that again. We're going to have another week of hot temps here. But so you can hear trees. And I've got to digress just a little. My first Austin home, there was Ted and Fred. You can ask a tree for a name. I'm sure, over time, if it was 5 different humans over 100 years, they might give out different names. Don't think there's a driver's license somewhere. But I used to remember Fred because that was my front yard, FR. And Ted was just over the fence in my backyard in that house. And then the next house in Leander, they all had names. And there was sort of a ringleader who was really cool. It's a long story, but you can get to know your trees. I think there's always going to be a tree in your life somewhere, somehow, on your property, someone else's property, just on your usual walk. But if you can pay attention more, my tip, and I'm going to turn this over to you for your tip or tips, how would you suggest people, you might not have your binaural beats going on, or maybe you're like, yeah, come fresh off of that, put both hands on the tree. What's your suggestion for not just tree hugging, and I mean that literally, what's your suggestion for interacting with a tree that might be all around you all the time?
Well, first I have to tell you, we did name one of our trees Sam.
Yep.
And he's right outside our back door. We actually got a face to put out. So anyway, we put the face on the tree, just eyes and a little mustache and a mouth and a nose, and we call him Sam. Sam, Mr. What do we call him? We have a last name for him too. Anyway, yeah, I think it's great to name trees, and we name all of the wildlife that comes around regularly. So we have a groundhog, we've named Grover, we have a bunny named Bindi, and all the fish get names. But the trees, I'll have to come up with names for trees.
And they'll give you their names too. They'll give you a name if you ask. And that's been what's been crazy.
Sam. I should have asked Sam. Maybe.
Yeah, and I'm sure Sam's cool with it. Okay, so how has your perception of consciousness, what it is, what it isn't, or just how big it is, how has that shifted over time for you with everything you're doing?
Well, I always understood that I was more than just this person. I knew I had a soul. This is something that I just always knew. What I didn't know, and what I know now, is that science can support this. That it's not just me thinking, oh, yes, I'm not going to die, that faith that people talk about. there's actually more than faith. There's actually scientific evidence and support that our souls, that first of all, we have an eternal soul, and that soul will continue. And so I've only grown more confident in my understandings that this stuff is real. And all of the features I've learned about near-death experience with EBEN, I had a general understanding, but I dove really deep so that we could do these presentations together, so that I understood the phenomena. And now I understand it so well that every time I hear about, say, like hospice, a new hospice study that came out, asking patients about what's happening as they lay there dying, going through that death process, all of that matches exactly what happens in near-death experiences. And so what I'm finding is that there's an abundance of data to support what many of us, not just me, but many of your listeners already understand. And yet we walk around thinking, science thinks I'm a nut. Science tells me, this isn't real, but I know it's real. And so what it's brought to me is this comfort of really bringing that together. If any scientist ever challenges me on my beliefs, I know what to say now.
Well, thinking is often the block. I don't think people realize how much thinking, not that thinking's bad, we're not shedding thinking, but thinking is actually the only barrier to more love, sharing love, and it's the structure and knowledge systems too that are self-limiting, because it's knowing something to the preclusion of possibility is our preferred method. And so I wanted to ask you, there was Seth in the 1970s, kind of when the whole New Age thing started. Jane Roberts, I think, light being amazing. I mean, if you ever wanted to go back, it's online. You can find PDFs of the material, The Nature of Reality, or Seth Speaks, whatever it was. But I mean, complex compared to Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks, which is much more direct and simple. Again, light beings, I believe. But if you go back to Seth, there'll be a time in your life where it'll make a lot more sense. And one of the things I wanted to bring up, there's the concept of past lives. But the concept of your past lives being simultaneous to now, whoa, try to grasp that one. And then here's one more for you, because I have never asked about the past lives of like the angels that I end up talking with. It's been volunteered to me, being a woman with a sock stuffed in my mouth, dying in childbirth, a Roman soldier, this, that, some interesting ones, and geographically all over. But the fact that they can be simultaneous and a little bit overlapping, I can't grasp still to this day. So how do you handle the past lives topic? What have you enjoyed about it? Do you try not to get caught up in it too much? I don't put a ton of effort there, but I did like what Seth touches so many things, and again, mentions what you mentioned earlier, that you have to go through what you think you know through your version of reality at the moment, just version 1.0, and then into your heart and into a much broader reality. And I don't think that process ever stops. It's consciousness, it's growth, it's recirculating back through like a pool filter almost. So tell me a little bit about one of those topics and how you're not playing around with it, but exploring it.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Seth, because we've had people tell us that everything we talk about is consistent with what Seth said. And so that's really interesting, because they think somehow we got it from Seth, but I'm thinking, no, we're just tapping into these universal truths. And others besides Seth and us have said these things as well. But in terms of the past lives, I have explored that. I have to say, I haven't found, but my understanding of past lives is that the ones that we remember, the ones that come up, when we're, say, in hypnosis or in a meditative state, or a psychic medium might tell us, are relevant to what's happening in our lives now. Say a fear that developed back then that we can connect to, and then, dissolve that fear. And so I've had some forays into all of that. The idea of the simultaneous life and the whole time thing, I have to say that I grapple with all of that, knowing that time is a construct.
Yes.
Time is something we invented here. You said earlier, my name is whatever, but it's not really my name. It's a construct, right? We come up with names for things so that we can have some sort of consensus reality. And, we need time to have meetings, to, set train schedules and so on. But time is a construct for this world. And so the other spiritual realm, Eben has all kinds of technical names for it. He'll call it deep time. It's there is no time.
That's what Angel said. There is no time. We just are. And I thought that was pinging. And then the movie Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey has this incredible library scene where I'm always one that it takes me, non-duality took me 25 years to finally understand what it meant. I was reading the Thich Nhat Hanh book in a Acura parking lot of a dealership while my car's getting serviced, outside watching leaves swirl, and I hit the one sentence that's a non-sentence. It's blah, 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 non-duality, period, not two, period. And I waited 25 years for that. I didn't have some Buddhist professor that could explain it to me. So I'm super slow on the uptake, but when I get it, I get it. So I wanted to mention the movie Interstellar shows you a way of trying to grasp it. If you get to the library scene with a little bit of dust swirling, take it from there. Where are you again personally? Are you finding that, every 6 months, couple of years, there's some broader way of grasping, handling the topic?
Well, I think that scene is someone's future self trying to communicate to his younger daughter, right, over time and space. And so I feel like that's a very useful concept to say, ask for wisdom from your future self. So if time is just a construct and all of these things in the spiritual realm are taking place simultaneously, then that information is available to you when you go into that space of that now moment where it feels like no time is passing, or that, everything is lasting so long. You can access that information. And so that is something that I've actually done, is gotten advice from my future self. And so that's how I would use that.
Okay. All right. So let's do this. What's something personal you can share that would be not the time that it happened and what you asked and what the answer was, but what was a good takeaway that is a highlight, a mantra, or just a reminder that you say all the time? Like I get smile more, think less, worry less all the time from some Native American chiefs, from some angels. I just basically need to park it and let everything unfold. I'm well set up for the path unfolding ahead. But, we all do a lot of thinking and worrying. And there's the New York City side of me that's like, I should have done this yesterday. So, we're like, hurry up. I could say the last 12 years, if it was New York City mode, I'd be like, hey, I could have gotten this all done in a year and a half, chop, chop. But it doesn't work that way. It's part of the enjoy the flavor of life. So what's something that's flavor for Karen Newell, who we have on sacredacoustics.com, who's going to be in the Bahamas February 9th to the 11th, 2024. Check her out on Paradise Island with Dr. Eben Alexander. They're going to be wonderful at this. They've done it before. What's something you can share that's a real one that you in the middle of a walk and it's been a hard week and that you love to draw on for strength or just in excitement?
Well, I have two. And the first one is that phrase, all is well. And I actually used that phrase before I met Eben Alexander. I worked in a deadline-oriented thing, and I would often send emails to help resolve problems. And I often would type that, all is well in the universe, I would say, just to keep people calm. And that is the phrase that Eben said when he first awakened from coma. He doesn't remember, but his family does. He looked around at each of them and said, all is well. And so that's a phrase that we use all the time. But my more modern one, I watched that movie Oppenheimer, and at the very end of the movie, someone tells the nemesis, perhaps Einstein and Oppenheimer, who were having a private conversation, perhaps Einstein and Oppenheimer were talking about something more important than you. And so that one really helps me when I start to project, that little negative self-talk, how other people might be viewing me or something like that. I still do that. I'm human like you. And reminding myself that perhaps they're talking about something more important than you. Of course, they were talking about the destruction of the world, of an atomic bomb. That's more important than anyone. And so that's what I remind myself of when I get anxious in that way. Yeah, both really good phrases to tell yourself, all is well. And maybe they're talking about something more important than you.
I love it. And I love seeing your pooch on the counter behind you. That's cool.
I know.
I've got to mention, so people can meet Seth, and this is full on seeing Einstein, Carl Jung, angels, Native American chiefs, but Seth is different. Seth is a non-body I only know how to describe this, and I haven't done Seth a lot lately, just not something that people ask for. You can meet Steve Jobs too. A Danish astrophysicist really wanted to meet Steve Jobs. He was scared about meeting angels. He was meeting angels, and then he said, that was totally dumb that I wanted to meet Steve Jobs. And I had not met Steve Jobs then, so I was shy about it. But by the end of the session, got to meet Steve Jobs. I wanted to mention with Seth, non-body, so more like a Cheshire cat smile in the air. The point is direct, all languages, get any answers to any questions. And that's where, again, use your headphones, let music take you there. There's a lot of different methods. You can just go in a shower, have a moment of satori, samadhi, let go. But music's a good steadfast way of letting go. I like high vibe music that makes me happy. And I describe meditation as taking a nap. I wanted to blow you some sage. We've done this before. Audience members who have watched this show before have seen everyone do this. I do this on tons of YouTube shorts. You can catch this wherever you are and pretend it's now, there's no time and space. Let's cite Einstein and Karen Newell. Try not to view any of this as a big separation. Leave your eyes on the smoke. Ask the universe, if you don't mind, angels. Trust your heart. Trust that you already are fully connected. And you can ask for a floral smell. Irish angel mystic Lorna Byrne got daisies and roses in Ireland. And Jennifer McLean got 3 different flowers in California. So instead of it being a one-dimensional linear experience of seeing the sage smoke, it's Juniper Ridge. You get it at a Whole Foods supermarket. I believe they still sell it there. I have it on my website. I'm not affiliated, but it's really, what do you call it? Steadfast, safe, conservative sage. Really smells good. So catch the smell. I always suggest leaving your mouth 1 millimeter open. Breathe extra is the whole point of that. Don't listen to me ever. But see the smoke, smell the smoke, but ask for an extra smell coming in from your crew, ancestors, Mary, Jesus, Muhammad, God, Sai Baba, and catch a little bit of a floral smell if you want as well. And I assume I've got enough smoke going. Karen, you're getting that, right? Okay, so do you mind describing what you're getting?
I'm getting actually a combination of herbs. So like rosemary, sage, basil, kind of like an Italian seasoning, perhaps.
That's what we get for talking gardening. And with your permission, I'll put up like 1 or 2 angel photos. It's Joy and then Mac. Don't call her Mackenzie, but she's everything plants, animals, nature. And when you talked about gardening, I like literally reached over, pulled her photo out. And maybe a couple Native American chiefs. We've been so dry here. I've got 2 hummingbird feeders in its Grand Central station out there, night and day. I feel like I'm replacing the water in that literally twice a day.
We've had a lot of hummingbirds too this year. So many.
And they have names. And like a little baby hummingbird flying by, you can hear, my mommy told me to fly straight, fly straight. Oh my God, it will crack you up. But you have to just allow for this. Try not to judge it. Judging's like squishing the blown up balloon or popping it. You can judge to no end of, you could spend the next 5 years judging everything. It's really easy to, but there you're not really
also
living.
You can tell yourself, oh, I just made that up. And I learned to think, yeah, I just made that up. Get all that information, right? Instead of dismiss it, but wow.
Yeah. And ask for signs to just back you up on the heart side. Like your heart is just cool. It doesn't mind if you take another lifetime to figure this stuff out. But what signs have you gotten before I put up a couple of photos of angels for you, just to maybe feel, hear, blah, blah, blah. What signs have you asked for or just gotten? It could be, hey, we're thinking about writing this book. We're thinking about going to Indiana or Greece or South Africa. What have you been doing to go beyond a straight transaction of words to trust more, allow more, and be wowed or encouraged?
Well, we are actually toying around with another book idea. And interestingly, we had a very close friend pass away. And as we were discussing this book, he kind of showed up and to both of us in a feeling sense and kind of solidified what was going on. So yeah, being open to guidance from deceased loved ones. And EBEN has lost a couple doctor friends recently too. So we're waiting to see what that all might lead to in terms of that assistance and help from the other side.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, here's Joy, the emotion Joy, the very first people angel meet, ambassador communicator. You've met her before. People can put their hand out, feel her vibe through 2 screens. My only thing, again, just give yourself permission to let go. Ask your higher self or soul to get in there. But then if you don't mind, just ask angels to make it nice. Angels, make it nice. Get me out of my head into my heart. Thank you. That works fine. And you can ask her a private question, get an answer, get a hug. If you want to get an answer on the book or about that person who passed over or something else, something you could share out loud actually would be great. A reminder for us all.
I'm just getting, keep going. You're on the right track.
Good.
Yeah. Encouragement.
And then Mac, don't call her Mackenzie. Everything plants, animals, and nature. And if you don't mind hearing bravo on the gardens and get a tip, and whatever the tip is, or 2 tips or 3, if you could share at least one so that we chuckle a little.
Be careful with over watering.
That's something I used to do. Oh my God, all the time. You don't have to worry about it when it's equivalent of 117 and it's 108. There, you got to water multiple times in a day and you're just soaking. I mean, like inches of water.
Yeah.
I did want to get you, Native American chiefs. And with this, I don't have to light anything. They can bring you sage, leather, tobacco, sweetgrass, juniper, desert piñol. Here's Dull Knife, wisdom with some humor, very unconditional love, spirit guide who's here to help, wisdom. And here, I'll do this. Get a private answer, get a hug, catch a scent. And then if you could also get from him something for the audience.
Okay, it's a little complicated, but it was fast for me. The like Carlos Castaneda indigenous approach to use substances to connect with consciousness is something that we're often asked about. And this Indian said, no need for the substances.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know ayahuasca and DMT, or however you say it, I don't know, DMT, DBT, whatever it's called. It's a huge emerging modality, some of which has been around a long time, peyote, more earth, blah, blah, blah. But you can have that experience, and I'm still going to pitch binaural beats for folks only because it's like a launching pad into a broader experience. How about that? Did I say it?
Well, and you can do it any old time, and you can stop at any old time if you're uncomfortable or whatever, if you have somewhere to be, whereas those other substances require a rather long commitment and focus. So
yeah, it's like all the rage right now, and that's cool. Something's always going to be all the rage. Native American chief, red shirt. He's the gentlest mom in the world. Compassion, compassion, compassion. If you don't mind catching an extra smell, and again, some words of wisdom for us all.
I got some sweat, like from a sweat lodge.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, like a good sweat, and that cleansing energy is what he's letting go of anything that is holding you back.
Oh, I love that. You're going to get 2 versions of Geronimo, then we're all done unless you have a special request. And if it's anybody that you know that's more ancestral, not passed over in the last 2 weeks, I will put Joy's photo up. This will be a private experience to you. But I just wanted to mention that opportunity. You'll let me know if you want to do it. But here's Geronimo first, and you can ask him quietly. He speaks informally. The other 2 were formal, yes, no, proper. He's more like, yeah, duh, you already know the answer, just do it. He's action, dry wit, lightning bolt, like a Zen master, kung fu, like in those old Chinese karate films, martial arts films. And what do you get from Geronimo?
Okay, I'm getting, I don't know why you need me. You're plenty strong.
Oh, I love it. That was a good one. And that's totally his, he's sassy. That's still not the word I'm looking for. Okay, older Geronimo, if you don't mind putting your hand up for this one, breathe extra, make a private request. If there's some area where you could still let go a little more, or you just want some oomph, or you want some extra because you got to go finish writing a chapter or something, here's older Geronimo, and make sure you catch a good, it's very powerful. At home, just let go. Don't worry about the details. Keep letting go of the details. And breathe extra if you need to. Breathing is such a good technique. Exhale like a whale if you're still like, I can't do this, I'm not sure, I'm not worthy, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, he's more serious. He's like, don't let me down.
No
Don't let me
pressure.
down.
We can't end on that one. So here's Joy. This is totally private to you in the sense that you're not going to have to say anything except maybe like, I got something done. That's cool. But have a private chat, woman to woman here. Ask which ancestor, person, human passed over, or just another figure, or a bunch of figures. But if you don't mind, close your eyes on this one, get a little vision on your eyes. And you can have that loved one come in and squeeze your shoulder. If it's a really close loved one and it's appropriate, a kiss on the cheek, or put a hand out to your right into the air or left, wherever the open part of the room is. They can hold your hand if you wish to have it that way. You can have Joy hold your hand. You know, who's going to argue with an angel named Joy holding your hand? Audrey Hepburn does that all the time. But allow what you can allow for just a private little experience. And maybe there's some sort of generic advice coming in that would apply.
I can share it.
Yay.
My uncle Charles, he passed away. My favorite uncle, he passed away recently in, I think, February. And he brought laughter, humor. He's just like, don't forget the humor.
And he just came in and did that. Thank you for doing that.
Really sweet.
Yes, I feel like I'm wearing one of those weird partial caps out of a sci-fi movie or something. I'm getting whooshed big. Okay. Can you take just 2 to 5 more minutes? One will be a recap so you can remind us of like 3 to 5 of the bigger points. But the light body, you mentioned it. I've been working on that concept forever. Like one of the things, I gave the service away for 8 years. So I'd always ask, what does Michael do for people? More to help them understand what I do, but I'd be learning all the time. He channels. Dull Knife said that and took me a 17-mile drive home to be like, channel? I channel? Okay, I channel, fine. So it's been a learning process for me, but one was activate the rainbow light body. You know, whether it's Tibetan, Buddhist, or just New Age. Can you talk to us about the concept of the light body, our consciousness, and put it into some perspective for all of us in the way that you understand the concept of the light body?
Well, the concept of the light body for me is that's who we are without our physical body. And so I read about, you just mentioned all the different light bodies, the Tibetan rainbow light body, the Drunvalo Melchizedek modern Merkaba, that's another light body. I learned it from some other folks. But really, when people talk about seeing their loved ones after they've passed, they show up just in the form, most often they show up in the form of their most ideal self. So for many people, that's around age 30, when all their hair is there, their weight is perfect, you know, whatever that is, around age 30 is how people show up. And when I read the books by Michael Newton, who regresses people to their past lives, but then he regresses them forward to the point of death in that life so that they can then report what happens in between lives, is they all talked about seeing each other in their light bodies. So when you don't have your physical body, your light body may look very similar to how you look now, but maybe more like glowing. Or you could just be a glowing, you know, light resonance that has no resemblance to your physical body. But what's so interesting is that that light body is made of energy. And so it's emanating a certain resonance. And we feel each other's resonance. I dare say we feel each other's resonance even when we're in our bodies, but we think somehow, oh, it's the hormones interactions or something. No, it's your light body, your soul, your spirit. So your light body is that spiritual part of yourself. And many traditions will have you sort of activate your awareness of that part of you, because that part of you seems to have an influence on your physical body. And so becoming aware of your light body, your spiritual self, helps to kind of manage how your physical self gets around in the world. So I found it very useful to activate my light body in a certain way. And I kind of combined a bunch of different techniques in this light body recording of how you kind of bring awareness to that part of you. And yeah,
so sacredacoustics.com, there's a specific a choice, a menu on that front to help you open up a lot.
Yeah, if you go to the products list, single titles, you'll find light body, and that's where you can read more about it and how different people have used it.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to digress for 5 seconds. I do it all the time. But here are my mom and dad. They passed away when I was 2, and it was his time to go when he was turning 26. My Michael Andre Ford Sr. and my mom when she was turning 43, an artist, but hundreds of people have met and seen them that way. Super supportive. I need to hear things 100 times if it's a tough topic. And, my mom and dad were talking to me in the pool 3-4 weeks ago. And then angels were like, hey, will you listen to your mom and dad? They said it then in the pool. That was the answer. Because, I'll have to ask the same question. Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? That's
but they show up in those younger forms.
Yeah. And so they showed up just like you said. And that's in the middle of a Target or a Walmart. If I know the person, they've met angels, they're comfortable, they've seen their energy. Because I don't want to introduce parents or passed over loved ones if it's a total stranger. It's got to be somebody who's, rolling with it, good natured. They're like, yeah, got it. What's next? And they've already maybe met their own guardian angel. Can I do one last thing? It'll be just more energetic aura. I think you did this before too, but just anybody out there can name any color they see in the lighter. It's a normal color, Bic lighter, white, orange, gold. What do you see, Karen?
Purple.
Okay. And then if you want, ask Joy to put a little extra on the lighter in a second. So you might see pink around it, sparkles. Anybody who's going to have a hard time with it, go do your binaural beats, listen to it, come back, and immediately coming out of it, buy a lotto ticket, I'd say first, and then do this. But see a little bit extra light.
Surrounded by pink energy now. I guess that must be Joy.
Yes. And you can ask her right now, and she's like, duh, it's me, but you get your version of it. Then I'm going to do it with my finger, and I'm getting to one last act here, which would be much more of us connecting only the highest intent, highest consciousness. I'm parking my thinking, doubt, fear, worry over there, only love. But I'll do my Bic lighter, and anyone can see my light off the end. I'll go on an old bodyboarding trip. Can you catch a little bit of light right there?
Sure.
Okay, and what color did you say, or colors?
Kind of a pale, translucent white. Like
and
smoky,
last
like
thing, you're in Charlottesville, Virginia, and so we've had Karen Newell on, who often is with Dr. Eben Alexander for events all over the place. SacredAcoustics.com is her website. I'll put my hand up if it's okay to connect only on the highest intent, and if you put your hand up, holy cow, my hand's getting warm already. Can you feel that?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I'm just going to whoosh rainbow light with this hand. It's one of those things that I do as a healer. Take me with a grain of salt. It's really angels. I'll do 3 times and just let it be a blessing from angels. Think of me as just a match. You've already struck the match and you're discarding me. So here we go for the first one. Can you feel that one?
Yeah, it's coming as like a cool energy.
Okay, second one. Same thing or different?
A little fuller, I'll say.
Okay, last one, and she'll give you something private about it. Ask for a certain segment to get some wind in your sails, whatever you want. Could be just for a big dog walk in a little bit. We've seen the pooches. It's been awesome. Here's the third one. And good?
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't explain it. It's sort of like wondering about non-duality and light bodies and all of the jargon and terminology. My message to everybody is relax and enjoy the ride. Use what I love about what you do, the Sacred Acoustics, is it's not about the lingo, except, obviously beta, gamma, alpha, delta, and a million other of those. But the bottom line is it's not harmful. You can shut it off anytime. It's just like a launching vehicle, the first, second stage of the rocket. So you can go to your moon, which is the heart, or the connecting to all with no boundaries, whatever you want to call it. So, okay, Karen, we're wrapping up. What are the last 2 to 5 summary points, a reminder to keep it simple, keep going? We're all on these unique life journeys. What do you have for us?
Well, tacking onto you, these binaural beats, I think of them as training wheels. So they really help you to get into these states when you are, having challenges getting there. So they're training wheels. They train you to recognize states that really all of us can get into naturally. And I like to close with, anyone who takes the time to do this, kind of to go within, to clear our stagnant emotions, to get more in touch with that soul perspective of who you truly are and kind of opening to these kinds of ideas. Anyone who takes the time to do that, please accept my gratitude for doing so, because I understand that we are all connected through consciousness. And so as you work on your consciousness, developing that greater awareness of it, you're actually helping me and all those around you in ways that you really can't find words for. So please accept my gratitude for taking the time to focus on, you know, yourself, your higher self, your expanded self.
Ooh, that's beautiful. Like the more you are love, you're sharing love whether you know it or not.
Exactly.
And that's the whole point of the lesson in Earth School. Okay, is there a last, here's the concept. To hear your binaural beats, if we go to sacredacoustics.com or to your YouTube channel, there are samples anywhere that people can, yes. Okay, so I want to make sure they can.
We have the free 20-minute download, which many people use as their daily practice and never spend a dime.
Yeah.
And they're perfectly content. And so that's available by putting in your email address on your website. And there are also 1 minute, sometimes a bit longer samples of every single recording, so you can get an idea of what they sound like. And if you hear a voice on that sample, don't worry if the voice bothers you, because every recording that includes guidance also includes a version without any guidance at all, because we know everyone has a personal preference around being talked to or not. So you have that option in every case.
Genius. I love it. Well, Karen Newell, Charlottesville, Virginia. Thank you so much for being on Angels, Positivity, and Love. It is such a treat. Maybe we can have you both back on or individually back on later into 2024. It's been, again, such a treat.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. And to all your listeners, get out there and meditate.
Thank you.